This meeting is being recorded.
Abani County, everyone. This is Professor Rahh, Professor Emeritus, California State University Africana Studies Department, where I retired in 2004 after teaching there for 34 years. Second, I was former city councilman for the city of Compton, former Compton College Board of Trustees, and former Compton Unified School District Board of Trustees. I'm a retired professor from Compton Community College, where I taught psychology, history, and ethnic studies. We want, along with my co-host, historian Joe Hembrick, longtime activist and educator, and with the and educational administrator with the Linwood and Compton Unified School District, and a historian by his studies, as he says that he himself down at Eswan bookstore and various libraries, where he have a profound background in coaching. Also, he was the first Black coach at Linwood Unified, varsity Black coach for Linwood Unified School District, as well as an administrative centennial. And he is the one that commissioned a mural showing Black and Brown unity on the wall or on one of the buildings at Centennial High School, and frequent meetings with young men and young women at that school, teaching them character, values, and a perspective of entrepreneurship. We want to also recognize Brother Rashiki Maskani, who is the platform artist of this, founder of this program through CNN, Community Education Network, where his contribution to the movement is to provide a platform where we speak truth first to the people and then speak truth to power. We have community forums where we challenge the news and all the distortions, misgivings, and mishaps. And so we want to thank Brother Rashiki for that, and thank Brother Hembrick for being a long-time co-host for this show. Tonight we have a very special guest, very special presentation. This brother is, besides being one of my personal friends and one of my best and one of our family best friends and companion in struggle. We went through many battles up at Cal State Long Beach with Caucasians, and the Nifu Karim assassination of a young man, and also the Ron Settles case. We went to San Bernardino to deal with the Ku Klux Klan together when they shot that brother off the pole. And this is one of the most bravest brothers and that I've always had to work with. And second, he's an etymologist and historian and an acclaimed artist. He drew the first emblem for our Black Consciousness Conference, which is the longest Black Conscious Conference in the country that's still going on. He's also a social justice activist. He's lived in Japan. I ain't talking about visited. He lived there. He lived in Africa. And now he resides in Cuba, as he called it, not Cuba, Cuba. He always correct me when I talk that, but he's an author. He's an author. He has given lectures all over the place. And I used to have him in my classes at Cal State Long Beach, and whenever we have conferences, he was one of our special guests. But his first book was called Black Truth, and it dealt with the origin of the letters, the sounds of the letter. Where did the A come from? Where did the R come from? Where did those sounds come from? He traced them all the way back to the homeland continent. And then he also came out with Black Revelations, life after death. Most people don't even want to talk about it. We're in the quest for immortality. We trying not to die. You ain't got no choice, so you might as well study it and get to know about it, what life after death means. And his third book, his next book, the one that we're going to discuss tonight, is called Conspiracy Sites, a real critical writing of just the conspiracy of Europeans trying to keep their roots and connectedness to the various origins of their existence secret in their relationship with Africans and the rest of the world. So we want to think, but before we get started, brother co-host Joe Hembrick, do you have any comments you want to make before we get started?
Hey, brother, I just love the book. I read it in its entirety. I got a few questions. I'm going to read it again. And I got to get the middle book, which Brother Rob been promising me. I haven't got that yet, the Revelation book. And I don't want to take up no more of your time. I want you to speak, and I'll come back asking some questions after your presentation. But loved it, brother. Everybody needs to read it. I've been telling everybody I know to read it. All right.
Okay, before we get started, Jubal, we also want to say Brother Mashinda has chimed in, and he's one of our hosts and steadfast platform members with deep discussion. He's deep in Louisiana where they're having a lot of issues with the weather, a lot of issues with them trying to take over their educational system and things of that nature. But he's here, and he's a consistent brother that be on the platform all the time, Brother Mashinda. So go ahead, Asar, it's on you.
Well, greetings, all friends, all of you guys, and glad you could all tune into this. When my book first came out, we had ordered 5 copies as proofs. They were not for sale, and they were sent to my son's house in Florida. But before they arrived, I had to go back down to the island. So I really didn't get to check the printing itself until about 4 weeks after it actually was available. But when I started reading through, I came to the chapter, I believe it's on page 37, where why whites are evil. And it struck me to say, I wonder what Webster says about the word evil. So I looked it up, and it's traced back by all the Western dictionaries only as far as medieval English. Well, it's like, medieval English means between the 3rd century and the 8th, 9th, 10th century, all the way up through the Dark Ages, you might say. It was all medieval times. So that meant to me, since they did not trace this term no further back, and certainly it did not originate in England or Germany or any of the Nordic countries. All the ones they list, they say evil, and they give certain samples. They say evil spelled IFEL and UVEL and YFOL, and they trace it back to Middle English, to Anglo-Saxon, to Old Frisian, to Denmark, to Old Saxon, to German and Gothic, all these European countries. But we know that European countries could not have originated the human language, simply because we know the humans originated in Central Africa, so they had to be a natural connection to that. So then in tracing and wondering why they would assign a word like evil, which, that's a pretty important term. Why would they, how did they develop it during the medieval, during the Dark Ages in Europe? And so I did some more research, and I came across, let me show you this hieroglyph. I hope you could see that clearly. Wait a minute. It is a picture. Can you see that, everybody?
Yeah.
It's a picture of the leg from the calf down, and I had listed it in Black Truth as representing the letter B. And just in the picture itself, of course, tells you a lot of its definition. As the letter B, it means the base or the bottom or beginning or the beneath, under the bed, we say, of a river, etc., etc. So that B really meant to be. The word be, be, comes from this hieroglyphic symbol. Now, in the Christian version, the Old Testament version, Judeo-Christian version of the creation in Genesis, they talk about Adam and Eve. Well, as it turns out, Eve, the letter V interchanges with the letter B, so that originally the word would have been any combination of vowels along with the letter B as representing the female concept of the first producer of life, the first mother of humanity. So Eve was not an evil term to begin with, but the V interchanges with B, and that is where the Christian terminology or the Jewish terminology comes from to produce, and I should say the Hebrew terminology comes from to produce the story of the Garden of Eden. So the L on the end, so Eve is EVE, which begins the same as interchangeable with EVI or evil. So the L at the end of the term is represents the sun. It interchanges with the letter R, so we say Ra, my brother. Ra and R and L interchange, so that when you put R at the end of a word, it means the source of any action or activity. So, for example, in English, every verb where there's an act going on, like talking, like I'm doing, the source of the talking is me, so therefore you say the talker. Or even inanimate things like something that keeps things cool, you call a cooler. Or something that warms up is a heater, and on and on and on. So R and L signify the source, they're interchangeable, and they signify the source of any action or activity. So this L at the end of the word evil then meant that the Eve, EVE or EVI, was the activity that this, in metaphor, this woman created in the Garden of Eden. Well, what did she do? She is attributed with being seduced by that phallic symbol, the serpent, and tricked into eating from the tree of the forbidden tree, the tree of knowledge. And because of that, God, this is all, metaphysical, folkloric, if you will. God puts a curse on all humanity forever because she ate of the tree and then offered it to Adam, who in turn ate of the fruit, and boom, boom, boom. So now the term evil evolved as, with Webster's definition, in the medieval times when the Catholic Church had total control over all of Europe. In fact, it was called the Roman Catholic Empire. And at the same time, it was called the Dark Ages. Why? Because they erased everything. They were trying to, their great enemy was the what you say in English, gnostics, which really is eunostics, which I'm going to get to in just a second. So that the term evil and the term bad, for that matter, both evolved from this letter B. And the word bad means the ba or the B, and B interchanges with Eve, so that both of them evolved from this folk story about what went on, the going on in the Garden of Eden. So the fact of the matter is, is it was developed as a term that designated something terrible, something bad, simply because it was first a woman and secondly a black woman, and they wanted to attribute the source of evil. And if you study the histories or anthropology of the European peninsula, you find out that they always denigrated women. Women literally had no value to them because at one point in their evolution, it was so cold in uh, that section of the world that and people were hunters and went out in the field looking and hunting animals, and women were virtually sex, kept for sex to produce more sons. So that, I mean, if you studied history of Europe, you know that they didn't even allow the women to vote until about 100 years ago. So they kept them suppressed that way. And when it came time to designating anything as wrong or bad, they equated it to doing Eve. And Eve was a designation for Eve in the Garden of Eden. She had done the first sin, they call it. And everything since then is doing evil or doing Eve. So that is basically I would have, had I thought of it or had I, considered it, put that as the beginning of the chapter, Why Whites Are Evil, in the book The Conspiracy of Silence, as to introduce you where that term comes from and show you that the English, not only English, but all the European languages were heavily suppressed. Their origins were heavily suppressed by the Catholic Church, who had complete control over the empire, the Roman Empire. And so that's the first point I want to make. The second point would be in a term we're pretty much familiar with, in called the U. Now, I say U because that was what it was called in its origin, but in variation, it is, and I'll have to make another picture, which I hope everyone can see. It's a picture of can we see that? Walking legs, pronounce either you, and I and J interchange. At one point, I and J were the same letter. So that I with the dot or a J with the dot were virtually the same, the different styles of the same sound. So that I interchanges with J, but then J has a second interchange with G or K or C or Q. So that uh, IU can then be pronounced YU or JU. All the people, and then JU, well, let me continue. JU interchanges with G because J and G interchange. So then you have Jew, and that's where the term comes from, by the way, that we're all familiar with. So that the people who believed in nature, the belief in nature was widespread all over the world until the Roman Catholics came along. Until Constantine came along in the 3rd century of the Christian era. And what had been a minor sect, I explain all of this in the book, after the death of Augustus around 12 AD, 1213 AD, then they wanted to say that he had been the Messiah, all of that kind of stuff. So they were taking what was mythology, metaphor for the sun-earth relationship, and wanting to convert it into an actual history. Well, nobody accepted it. Come on, that's like saying Superman was the latest savior and all of that kind of foolishness. So anyway, this small group of people who wanted to raise Augustus, Caesar Augustus, to the status of Messiah or Savior or Holy something. I mean, they even paid people to come and adore him as virtually the so-called Messiah without understanding what the term meant. And back in Egypt and in all parts of the world, really, the Messiah was a designation for the time when the sun shifts in the zodiac from one era to the next era. It went from Aries to Pisces, and then from Pisces, and now it's in Aquarius. So these things were noted by the ancient Egyptians. So the Mesu or Messiah was a child who grows to be 12 years of age because there are 12 signs in the zodiac. Each time it changed was a new age. This is where we get the whole concept of the Messiah or Jesus as it evolved to growing to the age of 12 years old. Anyway, this term "you" was every place. People who believed in the coming sun. It meant you with the walking legs, and I'll show it again, meant to come. That's simple. It was a metaphorical title for the sun, so that the sun coming at sunrise or in the spring, coming from the winter in the spring, was known as you. And this was the belief all around the world until the Christians came, and the historical Christians came along. So you was a name, a title for the sun, as represented in the glyphs by these walking legs, and which meant to come. And if the legs were read in reverse, as you could see there, then it meant to go. So the ones that are read, the hieroglyphs, when you read them from the right to the left, these legs meant coming or to arrive or preceding, etc. And if they're read in the other direction, then it means to go, to leave. And this is how they evolved into Latin and English terms, to come and to go. Um, come begins with C, which interchanges with K. And K, of course, as I mentioned earlier, interchanges with J and G. And so you can see how it evolved into these terms. Now in Spanish, you have I, or which interchanges with Y, U, and then U interchanges with V. That's why you put the two V's together and you don't say double V, you say double U, because they interchanges with the letter U. So so when you see these terms, yeah, you or yay, or sometimes with an A, it meant the sun that was coming. And it was the name for the entire religion that we know and pronounce today as Gnosticism. But as it turns out, the term Gnostic is incorrect. That's the English pronunciation. If you look it up in any of their dictionaries, the G is silent because they avoided the explaining just what the term meant. It was not gymnastics, not according to the Africans and the people who believed in the youths, but it was eunostic. Eunostic meant the people who knew about the coming sun, the coming child sun, as it repeated itself in a cycle over and over each year, each morning, each day. Okay, so and if the glyphs were read from the left to the right, it meant to go. It meant the coming child, meaning the sun, or the going child. Yeah, if you're coming, you're going, because we live on a circle. So either way, coming or going. Now the yay, IA, which is the glyph of the legs moving away from not away from the reader, but moving from left to right, became hey. Hey Su, meaning hey, meaning the going child, Su representing the child or the seed. So Jesus, translated into Latin as Jesus, and became the title for the Jesus, that in English, Jesus, the same letters, the same words. And I explain all of that in, I think, all my books, but I wanted to make it a special emphasis here to point out one thing. And just like the Catholics would deny the origin of the term evil by connecting it to Africa and showing that the word was named after Eve, and Eve was not a bad word at all. It meant the beginning of life, the human life. And just as they wanted to conceal that fact, then all of these so-called Egyptologists and the ones who supposedly interpreted uh, the uh, the hieroglyphs of the African hieroglyphs, they're all white men, all Christians. I mean, all of them. There was no women, there was no person of color, so that the definitions that they provide were definitions that tend to lead you away from the truth, from the facts, and hide the idea that all the European languages evolved out of Africa. So obviously, so too did the Europeans. And that brings up the sticky point about, well, what happened to you? You know, because they, of course, as we know, are mutations. And
Go ahead.
how did they come about, you see? So this became becomes the question that they don't want to discuss. So they disconnected themselves from Africa by misdefining the origins of the terms in all of their languages. So you look up, and I have a dictionary that weighs 11 pounds. It's over 4,000 pages, English dictionary, 4,000 pages. And then more than half the words in there uh, all came from ME, medieval English, which means under the control, the time in Europe under the control of the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church were the first ones who accepted the idea of a historical Messiah or a historical Jesus, or what was a metaphor for the Son they wanted to convert into history. And they were a minor sect for the first couple of hundred years after Caesar Augustus passed away, and they in these group of followers, they were like Trump followers, basically. You know, they saw him as their God or whatever you want to call him, Messiah, you know, and you couldn't tell them nothing. So they were the ones who were really minor, because all of the empire, the Roman Empire and the Roman Catholic Empire after that, and all across the world really were Jews, or Jews if you prefer. But that's what they believed in. And that was the name of the religion of the ancient people of color everywhere in the world. And it was the name that survived the catastrophe that created the mutations in Europe and survived, but it's the one that is now they're trying to conceal and hide by saying that a word like gnostic doesn't exist, or that the G in gnostic is silent when it's not. But then that's what can you expect from these Europeans, so-called experts on language and whatnot. So their whole idea of trying to disconnect Europe from Africa is best, in my opinion, uncovered by simply uh, looking into their dictionaries, encyclopedias, search sites, and whatnot, and seeing what the origin of the terminology that they use. If it traced only to Middle English or Old Saxon or Old High German or Danish or Anglo-Saxon or Britain, any of those European origins, it's impossible, because they had the language from directly from Africa. Even in the cases where they traced words back to Latin or Greek, those terms as well evolved out of Africa. 90% of the language in ancient Greece was taken out of Africa. That's where they learn all of their languages from. So this is a point, important point to establish, because we have a lot of misconceptions about what has happened to us. People, look, people fear death. Why do they fear death? Because of the Bible and the stories that the Bible gives you, and about not believing in God, and not breaking some commandment or whatever. And all of this has got people afraid to die, when in fact we all have to die. Why should we be afraid of the inevitable? You can't change it. Your fear is not going to help. What is necessary is to understand what it entails. And what it entails is that uh, everything that physically comes to this earth, or is created on this earth, stays on this earth. When you die, your mind, your brain, everything, the last hair on your body stays here on this earth. It doesn't leave. And nothing can leave the solar system of this sun. If it does, if it's possible to leave this solar system, then that means you could have chaos in the universe. What would there be to prevent cataclysmic collisions everywhere and chaos? You understand? So each star, each sun has its own gravitational effect. And we all circle, in our case, we circle around this one we call the Milky Way or whatever. But uh, uh, you cannot leave that galaxy, and you cannot leave that solar system. This intergalactic travel, that's all this European physics, they don't consider that in the black mind, the only way to travel the universe that makes sense is to do it non-physically. So when you die, you transform into an immortal being, your mind. That's why amenta, someone asked me a little earlier, what does amenta mean? Amenta literally means the mind. The spelling is the same. M-E-N-T for menta, or M-E-N-D, M-I-N-D. It's the same thing, you see. So this is the teachings of Christianity has led us to fear or transition that is inevitable. We were born, we physically look like our dad or mom or grandma, that's physical. But we each have our own individual personality that comes with us at, at birth, and departs that physical body at death. So immortality is for everyone. The problem is the quality of the immortality. And that is dependent upon how you use your mind while you're here on this earth, how you address all of the challenges and the problems you face, and experience the love and friendships and on and on. All of the things shape your personality, so that by the time you transform at the end of life, then your personality will determine what kind of immortality you have after that point. So these are the 2 points that I felt like I needed to emphasize, because I know we struggle to survive. We all do. I mean, that's just a normal part of being here. But no one can not finally reach that transition. And we should not have a negative opinion about that transition. This negative idea we have about it is only come about since Christianity has come about. Before that, we believed in the spirituality, the idea of the spirit leaving the corpse at death and being transformed or reborn or resurrected into the spiritual realm. We emphasize it over and over. That's why we raise so much opposition when the historical Christians came along, and then war erupted because we were all people who believed in you. And you was the name of the religion, and we were called yous. And it's like right now, I see all of you and I say, hey, brother, or hey, sister. You know, it's just we normally call each other. That second person is my brother. You understand? In the olden days before Christianity, it was my you. We might not have said you, but we said you. And this is how the English word you, as in you and me, that's how it evolved because people called each other that all over the planet, but especially in the European peninsula. So you look up the word you in English, and again, you'll see it's only traced back to medieval English, during the time when the Catholic Church controlled all Europe, and the time they called the Dark Ages because they destroyed Gnosticism. Their uh, uh, main objective was the destruction of all Gnosticism. Without destroying it, Christianity could not have survived. So anyone who had any idea about natural science was destroyed. They called them witches, heathen, pagans, all kinds of names, burned them at the stake. Millions of people died from the onset of this historical Christianity all the way up, and it's still going on today. And that's the point that I have to make to people, that it's really important to uncover that destruction led by the Catholic Church and popes between the time of Constantine in 325 AD all the way up until the present time. And they have tried to constantly destroy nature in every form, trying to project themselves as being superior because they lack melanin when the opposite is true. So this is projection. We know that they heavily arm themselves with bombs and guns. I mean, look at America, my goodness, with all the guns that's in the populations, because when they invented those guns, what did they call them? The great equalizer. Equal to what? Equal to people of color, because they lacked melanin. They lacked the ability to see in the dark in the other world. Oh, there's one other point I might mention here about dark. We say the eve is the night before. Well, for the same reason, Eve was viewed as a dark or gloomy or, black. Anything negative to the European melanist mind was dark. That's why they call that whole period of time when they squashed knowledge and burned books by the millions and destroyed the scrolls and defaced all the monuments and burned people at the stake and tortured them. And it just goes on and on. Uh, uh, they call that the Dark Ages, making everything negative. So those are the 2 points that I just wanted to make that occurred to me since the publication of Conspiracy of Silence, that I wished I could have added into it. And I also wanted to emphasize that I'm trying to revise it as soon as I figure out how to put the graphics into the book, because I believe many of these hieroglyphs should be included in the book, and a lot of them are self-explanatory, and you cannot trust the interpretation of any of the so-called Egyptologists, because number one, they're all Christians, they were all white men, they were all basically trying to project themselves as superior. If you read Webster's introduction, I think I mentioned it in Conspiracy of Silence, they said they used the best minds and experts in the world to determine the etymology of the English and other languages. And the fact is the opposite is true. So those are the points I wanted to make. So I might ask you for your thoughts about those.
You have to unmute, Professor Rahh.
Before we get started, I just want to let you know that Sister Mashariki, Naomi Rainey is here, along with Jerry Davis,
Oh,
Jerry Davis, Brother Kumba, Omar Montgomery,
oh yeah.
and with somebody else. But it's still, we just wanted to welcome them because, you know, they were your former colleagues at Cal State Long Beach, as well as activists, especially Brother Jerry Davis and Mashariki, who began every conference with, I believe the children are our future, you know, with her voice. So we want to thank them for being here, brother. And I don't know if there's any other students that I missed, but we'll get to them. Any questions concerning what he's talked about so far?
Okay, Rod, we have about 22 people here. So
I know it.
I have a question.
So we'll go.
Yeah, it's a very fundamental question. Unfortunately, I had problems getting on this call. Yes?
Jerry, I think you have two devices going.
I do.
It's giving us a little echo.
Okay, I have a question.
Go ahead, Brother Wallace, while he's getting ready.
Okay, hope this doesn't drop. I don't never done this on my iPhone before. All right. I heard everything that was being said. And I'm just wondering, where do you go with this knowledge? I mean, what are we to do with it?
We say you don't know where you're going unless you know where you came from. So we need to fill in the gaps. We need to, if we can establish that all the European languages came out of Europe, then we have to concede, or they have to concede, that they are, out of Africa. And then they have to concede that the people that speak them also came out of Africa, obviously. Then they have to address the fact that they've lost their melanin. And then they have to address the fact of melanin itself. What does it mean to lose melanin? How does it affect you? We know how it affects physical appearance, but it affects you mentally and psychologically as well. And once we do that, we have an understanding about who these people are and why they've been so dangerous for people of color around the world. You know, the whole world was colonized in just the last 500 years by Europe. The Indian in India, they got 2 billion people almost, maybe 1.5 billion. They didn't try to colonize no place. The Chinese, same thing. No one tried to colonize, take over, and commit genocide against people in order to steal their lands and cut down the trees and kill off the animals. I mean, come on. Once you establish through etymology, which is pretty easy to do, then you could follow that up with the true history that is hidden. We've lost from the 4th century, 300 AD, all the way up until right now, we've lost all of that. That is knowledge. Anytime you add knowledge to who we are and where we came from and what our intents are, then we know where we're going. One big thing is we'll stop being Christians. Come on. I mean, you believe in a folk tale. It's nothing but a folk story. And the reason that we accept that folk story in the first place was out of fear for our lives, you know. And then some people continue it today because they need to, they don't have any other mechanism to feel spiritually comfort and a spiritual comfort zone outside of Christianity. And the reason they don't have that is because they don't know. Ignorance. So that's why it's important to reestablish this history that was almost totally erased during the Dark Ages. Thank goodness for the glyphs, because the glyphs were buried in the coffins, and that was before the Christian era began. And then they started interpreting long after they had erased all of the gnostic records and people. And then they started interpreting them and finding out that, hey, all of this Christianity was plagiarized from African mythology and then altered to fit whatever they said it, whatever they wanted it to be.
Okay, so where did we go?
So Brother Wallace, we got 20 people on here, over 20. So we got to move on.
We got Jerry Davis.
Jerry Davis. Then Omar got his hand up.
Mute, Jerry.
I got it. It doesn't answer my question, but okay.
We come back to you, Wallace. Don't go nowhere.
I just wanted to know one thing.
Jerry, there he is. Excuse me. I haven't seen you in so long. I just wanted to say hello, brother. Continue with your question.
Jerry?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, all I wanted to know was this was, you know, it's almost embarrassing, but I had some technical difficulties. And so I didn't get on this call I missed the first 5 minutes. And what I was able to deduce is that there's a new publication that's coming out that was authored by my old friend, you know, Mr. Jubal, but I didn't get the perspective. I'm really curious to hear what you. Oh, it's right here. Oh, that's beautiful.
Well, that is the perspective in a word, but you can order that book on Amazon. So
yeah, I am.
Okay.
I am. Thank you.
Oh, great.
Any other questions?
Brother Omar got his hand up.
Okay.
Brother Jubal, how you doing?
Omar, where are you? I don't see you.
I'm in Denver. I mean, I got my camera on.
Oh, there you go. Man, it's good to see you. I hear you went to the San Diego State game. Is that right?
Yeah, I went to the San Diego. Yeah, I'll be going to the Final Four next week. I just wanted to say, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for being the mentor and the teacher in my life and just always being there to give me wisdom. And it's just beautiful seeing you. And thank you for all the work you're doing and all the teaching. So just wanted to share that, brother.
Yeah, brother, thank you. And
Any other questions? Any other questions? Yeah.
I want to make a comment. Hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, brother, appreciating your presentation, what you said, to maybe help answer, what Brother Wallace is asking, if I understand correctly, is that, getting away from the lie, we tend to tap into the African spirituality of what our ancestors left us to study by. And it gives a whole different perspective on, the life after death and the religion and all that. Like I said, spirituality is a much higher form, than religions. And it helps you make that connection, through your pineal gland and your melanin, to that world that we don't really know about. The people that are caught up in the churches drinking the Kool-Aid, as I say. So I don't know if that helped answer Wallace's question, but I just wanted to chime that in. And there's probably some more questions I ask you down the line. But go ahead.
Okay, we got Brother Machine. Who's that? Oh, go ahead, Jerry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if I didn't get the question first time around, I apologize for that. But the thing that stands out the most to me, we all grew up in Christian families. I assume we all did. I know I did, My grandfather on my mama's side was a pastor at his church, and my grandfather on my father's side was a deacon in his church. And my mother and two of my sisters became Jehovah's Witnesses. So I understand the impact that Christianity has had on us. It is a evil, not to pun the word, but it's been an evil force in our lives. And that's hard for Black people to understand anymore because we're so immersed in it. You know, all of our most important ceremonies take place in the church. And even myself, as I said in the book, growing up, I loved going to church, you know, because all the people were there. All my friends and family were there, and it was communing together. So it was a wonderful experience. But the message was just straight out of Superman. Come on. And we were asked to believe those things. And I remember to this day, as a 3 or 4-year-old, asking my Bible school teachers about this or that story, about Noah's Ark, and I don't remember all the ones, Daniel and the Lion's Den, all of those folk tales. And they're not being able to explain anything as to how any of these so-called miracles happen. Well, boy, you just got to have faith, things like that. That's how they respond. That doesn't help us as a people. We have to learn that we were people who built pyramids. Think about it. We set the standards for every discipline of science in the world today. And the only thing that we're focused on now is the physical aspects, because we're listening to people who don't have the melanin that enables them to look into the spiritual aspect and see that the two are balanced together, and that without that balance, we are deformed. And that's why it's important we have to start somewhere. To stand up and say that Christianity is just bullshit, which it is one thing. But then to prove that it is by going back before and showing what the mythology was, and showing how they plagiarized it and then altered it, and then still were opposed. I mean, look at Rome after Constantine. There was war after war after war after war after war, revolution against Rome, one after another, until 200 years later, after Constantine, the political faction of the Roman government fell. And that's when the church took over, and it got worse, simply because people were rebelling against this Christianity. They called each other Jews because they believed in the sanctity of the sun-earth relationship, nothing more. And if we had followed that route, I'm sure we would not be faced with the extinction today because of the misuse by the same devils, Europeans, for imposing their physical science on all the world, wanting to rule the world, not by fairness or honesty, but by gun, the bomb, by threats, by intimidation. Their whole history is filled with it. They couldn't even agree with each other. Their whole history is one of warfare, constant warfare against each other, until Columbus stumbled into the Americas. And then after that, they still fought each other even as they went and colonized the world. Come on. How are you going to listen to the religion of these people? Think about it. Look at them. If you really can trust them, I mean, come on. I've lived with them on those boats. I've been in the trenches with them. So are you kidding me? We're supposed to trust these people? No, 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 no. And we can't trust any of the black beanheads that speak for them and act just like them, because they're destroying the earth. And I don't see any way, no turnaround for the extinction that we're in right now. This is really the ending of the extinction that began 3,500 years ago and produced these mutations. And from that time, we've been studying. We talk about the extinction of the dinosaurs, but it didn't happen in one day. It wasn't an asteroid that boom, and then they're all dead. It happened over a period of thousands of years until eventually life from that reptilian age was extinct. 99.9% of all life that has ever existed on this earth is already extinct. And we got to stop believing that we are special. Look, life was on this earth long before the first human arrived or it was conceived. And it'll be here long after we go. It just won't be the same. And this is what we have to accept. And in accepting that, we have to realize that we are going to die no matter what, individually, every last one of us, unless you know something that I don't know. And there's no point in fearing the inevitable. It's natural and it's normal. We don't welcome it because we want to stay as long as possible for whatever. But good people die young or old, it doesn't matter. And it's going to happen. And we just cannot have a negative burn in hell concept about it. We got to be able to say, tell it like it is.
Okay, so we got Brother Mashinda, and then we got
Mashariki.
Hey, Mashariki is good.
And then
Where are you?
Our brother's on too, Paul Ramey's on.
Oh my goodness.
Yana is too.
It's been many a year.
What's up, Brother Jerry?
How are you?
All right, all right.
All right. Hey, you up there in San Francisco?
No. No. Southern California, Moreno Valley.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, brother.
You and see you again
Rahh.
after so many years. Wow.
Yep.
It's been 40, 45 years.
That's
You haven't
man.
changed a bit. All you did was grow a beard.
Thanks. And lose some hair.
Okay, let's
Thank
go
you, man.
Brother
Much love.
and then Mashariki.
Hey, Brother Jubal, how you doing?
Okay. I'm
Brother
doing well, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you for your research, scholarship. My book will be here on the 31st of this month. I just ordered it.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yes, sir. And I understand what you're saying. We as as a society, as a people, people just play the hand that they're dealt. So it's not like you're trying to, make mockery of people and what they believe in and things like that. But of course, you've had a lifelong journey in researching and understanding. I appreciate that, and hopefully open the minds of others. It's a tough task, of course, because people are stuck on in different dimensions, and they are who they are. We love them all. It's just that I'm always a believer that everybody can make it, but unfortunately, we're up against a lot of time, and everybody won't make it. As far as understanding what you're talking about, my understanding of like you was talking about the hieroglyphs and things like that, the ancients, my understanding is you're talking about death. They have people say like say from a modern perspective, people might deem it as crazy because it appeared that the ancients had a preoccupation with death, like they couldn't wait to die, because of the fact that, what's on the other side, as far as the spiritual journey, so, that's what I subscribe to, appreciate it. I'm not scared to die. I can say that, not so much, it's too confidently, but, I understand what you're saying, and we just gotta, release some of those untruths that we've been presented with. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the comment, brother. Listen, I don't fear death because what's the point? It's going to happen. What I fear is ignorance, not using our mind. Gnosticism meant knowledge. The word Gnos as in Gnosticism, or Know as in knowledge, are the same word. You look it up. Gnosis means knowledge. So, That's what it's about. So we want to. It's not so much the idea of the inevitable, but uh, we have a choice when it comes to knowledge and ignorance, and we can't choose about life or death because death is inevitable. But knowledge or ignorance, we have a choice, and we gotta make the choice for knowledge. Why have a mind otherwise? Why ask questions otherwise? I mean, logic, use it.
Mashariki?
Hi, Jerry. It's been a long time. Thank you
Yes, sister. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, but I've been, following a little bit in your footsteps because I think one of the greatest educations is really being able to travel out of the country and being able to meet with people outside of your culture to really see what you're made of. When it comes to religion, there's good and bad in everything. Everybody who chooses to go into Christianity are not all wicked, evil people. There's some really people who have good hearts. And I think it really comes down to energy. I think that we're at a time right now where our frequency, the level that we are living at, how we generate a vibration is very important for be at a higher level, a higher frequency so that it'll project more love. We're at a time, I feel, in my experience, that our thoughts can become our realities in the blink of an eye. So I appreciate all the knowledge and information that you give us, but I think that there are some good people out there and that people are doing some beautiful things, especially young people, regardless of the times that we're living in and what's going on. Our generation, we're not going to be the leaders. It's the younger generation now that are leading us into better, brighter days, regardless of what it looks like. We're at a time right now where they want to just shut down our history and don't let anybody know the truth. They want to call it Black history, but it's American history if it took place in America. And I think it's really important that, we don't allow that to happen and that people using the internet have access to so much information that it should be used for better things than just seeing, the latest fads or things like that. I think it's beautiful that you wrote this book, that you shared this knowledge. I hope that a lot more people get an opportunity to read it and that we get a lot more opportunities to hear you speak about it. And one thing on the book, there's nothing on there to get in touch with you. There's nothing. If somebody wants to hire you to come and do another a podcast or any type of interview, there's nothing for them to be able to get in touch with you. Is there something that you can give that we can add on to this so for the future, if people are interested in hearing more about your book, they can get in touch with you or get in touch with someone who can get in touch with you?
Well, look, first of all, Master Rick, I appreciate your comments. I know there's a lot of good young Black people. Hey, I'm here with my grandchildren, so I know that especially. I'm not complaining about that. I'm not criticizing that. I'm saying, look, we have to choose we have to choose the truth. That's all. That's simple. And Christianity is fake, false. And it is the biggest obstacle and the greatest weapon that these white people have against us. And all of the white people created Christianity. Why do you think they created it? They are the only ones who went and colonized, enslaved us. No other people of color ever were a threat to us Africans. None. You know why? Because of they suffer from a deformity. That's what it is in a nutshell. And it attacks the earth and the environments of the earth just like a virus attacks the body. Sets up colonies and starts altering the locales, the locations, every place until nature has to recover. And in recovering, you have this whole idea of this global warming. It's a reaction of nature against the physics of the Europeans. And their main weapon that the Europeans use for white racism or fascism or white supremacy is the Christianity. So that's why I speak out so strongly against it. you know, and I realize I'm not criticizing the people who are in it for whatever the reason. I'm sure they have good reason. But once these things have been laid before you, the truth is there, and you can't refute it or deny it, then you have to cast off this Christian yoke of oppression and suppression, which has murdered our people for and still murdering our people every day. You know, that's what upsets me and just angers me to no end, because so many of good people are caught up in it with, and they have a mind, they have a choice between remaining in that thing and collecting all kinds of physical trophies and cars and houses and whatever, uh, instead of reaching for honesty and truth that'll help all of our people. A lot of Black people have the ability, just as we did in the old days. We had the same potential as the people who built the pyramids. We just have been able to use it because of the onslaught against us by these white mutations. You know, so, you know, if I offend anybody, well, the truth is offensive, but it's still the truth. Oh, and getting in touch with me, just ask Rahh. He knows how to do that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Good to see you again, Mashariki.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jubal, Jerry.
So, Jer, a moment ago, you mentioned the virtues of Mother Earth, nature, you know, the stars, so forth. The lane that I chose was African spirituality. It was African spirituality. And I'm curious, have you formulated an opinion on specifically African spirituality? You know, good, bad, or indifferent? You know,
No, I have not. And for me, it's just a title. What's it mean? You understand? Spirituality means life after death, in my opinion. Immortality. It's the same thing. You understand? And it
I think that's totally a piece of it, but yes, I agree.
It's not confined just to Africa. It is a part of all people of color. And this is what we have long forgotten since the onset of these Europeans, since for now almost 1700 years. And we've got to, maybe it's too late, I don't know, but we've got to reverse that by accepting and worshiping nature. Had we worshiped nature all along, we would not be faced with these problems. No. You see?
Yeah.
Instead, we've let this guy who is warped-minded, deformed, create his science and impose it on the whole world until we're caught up in this stuff. And we need to break it down and explain it. That's why it's so important to recover the lost knowledge of the dark ages, of what really happened, you know, and establish who these people really are, you know, these Joe Bidens and Donald Trump and Macron and that guy over there in Israel, all of them, they're white supremacists, all of them. And they want to rule the world by force, period. Yeah. Christianity is just a tool to suppress people, to keep them, you know, off track, away from the truth. So, yeah, I get angry when I think about it. I mentioned in my book all the native people that they murdered here on the American continent. You know, I'm right now down here in Florida, you know, and the Seminole people, native people that lived here are not even here. They're almost all of them were shipped to where? Oklahoma. Yeah. The difference between Florida and Oklahoma is like the day and night. Yeah. That's what they did. And then not just those people, but from all over the continent, they shipped people, destroyed the buffalo so the people couldn't live, you know, and then imported. You know, all the cows were never native to Western America. They were imported from Europe. There was no such thing as a cow in the Americas. Even though we think of all of these Western places, we think cowboys, you know, and Indians, which is a misnomer. But after they did all of that, then they imported us to work for them for free, not just work. They violated us in every conceivable way, murdering us, raping our women and then selling the children off. Come on. It's too much. And we're going to follow this devil? No, no, no. Malcolm said it right. These people are devils, and that's what they are. I'm just saying straight out.
Brother Jubal?
Mm-hmm.
Brother Jubal?
Yes.
I have a question. Now, when you wrote this book, when the purpose is to educate the people and educate them to a different way of thinking and looking at the world and understanding the world and studying the world, studying life, and having a liberational move to break away from the religious codism of white racism that is the undermining aspect of Christianity. Now, when you wrote, you have a number of subtitles, in your table of content. I just wanted to ask you about a couple of them. And I wanted to ask you about the concept of when you say the worship of nature. What you've been explaining it, but I think that sometimes people are used to worshiping what the European has taught us.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, right. I guess
in Islam and Judaism, yeah.
Right. I think that we have to understand what we mean by totemism, which people had developed totems to represent their particular families. And that totem was some aspect of nature, whether it was the lightning or rain or wind or whether it was the animals. It was some aspect of nature that was stronger than human beings were. We didn't have, as I mentioned, the claws and the fangs and the fins and the feathers. So we had to use our minds. And we knew that life on Earth required that, not required, but life on Earth is such that you rely on nature to provide all your needs. You don't need to outdo nature, one up nature. Yeah, look, these people built planes that'll fly around the world, What's the point? Really, what is the point? You ask them sometimes, what is the objective in developing this artificial intelligence? How does it improve the quality of life when in fact you're destroying the earth? And everybody knows it. Even as they know it, they continue on as before because the real God that they worship is money. They're doing it for money. They, despite all of these global warming conferences, et cetera, they last year dug up more oil than they ever have in history. So they haven't slowed it down. Why are they doing that when they know they're destroying the place, burning down your own house, literally? This is what, when these mutations came on the scene, and their main weapon was Christianity because it appealed to the spiritual aspect of humanity, of people of color. And they knew that was not their weakness, their strength, but if they could alter it in the black mind or in the brown mind, then they could change things, or they could control it at least. And this is why I speak out so strongly against the aspect of Christianity because it's destroying us. It's destroying our mentality. We're not who we used to be. We're disconnected from our African homelands, whereby we worship nature. We learn from nature. Nature was our mother and father. We learned everything, the sounds that we developed to communicate with each other. We learned from the sounds that the animals made, the way we reacted and learned how to feed ourselves was knowing the cycles that the animals performed over and over again until we understood how we could exploit that for survival. But we didn't need to, when they constructed the pyramids, they didn't have no cranes, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have none of the mechanics of the physical, that the physical white world has created. And they did not, especially, they did not pollute any aspect of nature. Whereas the white science, the physics that is polluting every aspect of nature. It's destroying it piecemeal, and they don't care because all they want is money. Money, 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 money. You know, this is why I say the worship of nature was us. We believed in this, the coming sun. If the sun don't come, we don't exist. So it was everything. The importance of that simple idea was so, central to all of our natural beliefs of all people, not just in Africa, but all people of color. And the only people that changed that were those who became deformed due to a natural calamity that caused them to inbreed. And when they just accept the reality of that and try to get back, and the only way we could, I don't think there's time, the only way we can get back to who and what we were or should be is by integrating. You understand them? If they lack melanin, well, we have the means to reintroduce it into their beings and end this madness that's going on in the world. It is madness. Why they're like parasites, man. They eat away at the body until the body dies, and then the parasite dies. And it's like they don't get it.
And that comes to the last chapter when you say the extinction. What do you mean by the
extinction? I think that they've destroyed the earth so much, or altered, I should say, the earth so much that it's when nature will rebound, obviously it'll rebound and rebalance, and then the life forms that will survive all of this, global heating in a word, that will survive all of that will be different from what we know now. So we'll become extinct. That's what I believe. And it doesn't matter because we all have to die anyway. It's just understanding that the death and transition is not the end of things. It's simply a transition. And this is what our people should understand. So we could start forming your mentality, start receiving truth in your life, and stop believing in these biblical folk tales that are misdirecting us and causing us to constantly be subjugated by the forces of the physical forces of white supremacy.
Okay, Professor Rahh.
I just have one more question. One more quick question. Jerry, would you go over water?
I'm sorry?
That chapter you have about water.
Uh-huh.
It's right during the equinox, and you say on page 173, water.
Okay. I don't know if you referring to a specific point, but let me say this about water. First of all, in the creation, as explained by Africans, the galaxy that we live in, which they call erroneously the Milky Way, was split between two sides of water. One was called the Upper Nu NU, and the other was called, I have it down on paper somewhere. The other was called the lower U. And wait a minute, as I speak. Anyway, and they were represented by the symbol, excuse me, N. So the upper N and the lower N. Now, if you take, for example, in the hieroglyphs, the symbol for water is a variation of the letter M. I think I got it here. Can y'all see that? I'm not getting any picture. Can you see that?
No, we can't see anything. Your picture is black.
Okay, well, I don't know how to do that. So, well, anyway, the letter N, if you take the first 3 strokes of the letter N and you reverse it and then join it together, you form the letter M. So that the 2 ends, the upper end, the upper side or the upper universe above the galaxy, and the one below were viewed upon as 2 separate oceans or seas. But when you speak of the total is when they join together and they form the letter M. Now, the 2 ends together are what the sun passes through over the course of a year, as it, I should say, the Earth as it rotates around the sun, as the sun passes through the upper and the lower end. So that's why you use those double N's for words like annual to indicate a year. Whereas the Japanese, for example, they use nen, N-E-N, means a year. So things like that. Then the M, once it's formed, represented Mar, or you could say Mari. And Mari, or Ma, was viewed as the original mother of life. She was the one who gave life. The female concept was Mar, which is why the Christians, when they concocted their Jesus story and altered it, took it from the term Mer, referring to the universe, and in metaphor, created their Mary for the Bible version, supposedly having given birth to Jesus, you see. So I wish we had the picture. I could show you the glyphs. But anyway, that's, you don't have life without water. Water was everything. Everything came up out of the water, including the earth, the universe itself, all of the physical objects that you see. The invisible objects are part of the universe, or the black universe, the celestial realm, is what we call the menta, the mind. So this is what we say when you die, you enter a menta, because you lose all physical qualities, and only you are the immortal spirit of the person that had been. So this is why the chapter on water, that's speaking in general. I'm sure that you might have developed a more specific question for me, Rahh, but basically that's what I was trying to say, that we shouldn't misunderstand the concept of Mar as it refers to the water, both celestial water and terrestrial water. We still say MER when we speak about the oceans here on Earth, in words like mermaid or, oh man, all of the various things. I can't think of the words offhand, but I've listed them in my book. So okay. I hope that answered your question.
Professor Rahh, Dr. Palm had a question.
But Joe did too.
Oh, go ahead. Don't let Dr. Palm. I'll go after.
Mr. Jamal.
Yeah.
I was the one that had mentioned the MENA.
Right. Amenta. Okay.
Yes. I was hoping that perhaps you could speak on the Amenta in relation to what it is.
Well, I just did.
And sir, excuse me, and also its relationship to the miracles of Jesus and the mystery concerning Jesus, the parallels that were written thousands of years before the
All right.
If you can speak on that.
Well, I can't get into the specific miracles of Jesus because so much of that has been altered. And all I could say is every reference that was made about this Jesus and his miracles or doings were taken from ancient mythology, African mythology, and then they were altered and tried to applied as being history of this so-called Jesus. So that's in a nutshell. Amenta is the realm, was the name for the realm that we go to after we die. Our minds survive, but not our brains. So that virtually is what, in general, the ancient, our ancestors in ancient Africa called the location that we'll be going to, if you want to put it into the concept of a location, because it means the universe in general, but the invisible universe.
If I can say one more, with what you just stated.
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
I was just replying to what you just stated. That's all. But what I wanted to ask is, for instance, the book of Coming Forth by Day, the weighing of the heart,
right,
takes place in the Amena. Is that correct?
It takes place at the end of the journey through Amenta.
Yes,
and Amenta was viewed upon as well, there's nothing in the on Earth that you could physically equate it to. So
it would be a mythology. In mythology.
Well, mythology simply means something that's spoken by orally, word of mouth.
Let me say that.
That's what the word means.
But the Amenta in reality doesn't exist. Just like the weighing of the heart.
Well, look, let's put it this way. You come here from Amenta as a personality that enters the child at concept and then becomes a physical entity. But the personality, of course, remains nothing physical. It is strictly from Amenta, and it's non-physical. Yet it remains becomes the individuality of the child during life. And once you transit life, you go on to the next world. That next world was called Amenta, whereby you have to traverse through it depending on your personality and the kind of knowledge you accumulated while you were here on this earth. And then you're, in metaphor, your personality is placed on the scale and opposite the feather, which represented the truth. So your personality has to be balanced by the feather of truth. There's nothing false or phony about it. And then once it achieves that, then in the pictures that the glyphs show, the book of Coming Forth by Day, then the Osiris, which represents the sun in Amenta, is handing this deceased personality the Ankh, which was symbolic of immortality. So I don't know. That's explained it very rapidly and leaving out some details, but basically that's what it was and is. And it was the highest point of our transition, being able to reach the so-called hall of truth and judgment, whereby your personality is placed on the scale opposite the feather of truth and knowledge.
So
And if you balance that, then you're able to receive immortality and manifest somewhere else in the vastness of the celestial universe, to manifest physically, that is, somewhere else in the vastness of the universe. So this entails immortality.
So the weighing of the heart.
Yes. Well, they say the Europeans are the ones who call that the heart. But you look at the object. I wish you could. I have a picture of it here, but I can't. Apparently I'm off camera. But
the word
it's
that
really the personality. I'm sorry.
The question. I do understand what you mean about the heart, but the concept.
The personality, yeah. I much prefer personality. That's what we're talking about.
The weighing of the personality against the
right.
As far as Asar,
yes,
and Haru, and all the other Netharu, which are principles, and the caricatures that are used to depict the Nether aren't real.
No, of course not.
So the weighing of the heart, or the weighing of the personality, I'm sorry.
Right.
The weighing of the personality.
Yeah.
These events that are in the book of Coming Forth by Day are not a reality.
No, they're not a reality in the physical sense.
That's what I mean, just in the physical
most of that stuff was explained by these so-called Egyptologists. A lot of the terminology is purposely misrepresenting in order to lead you away from the truth. So, you have to take a chunk. Nowadays, when I inspect or look through the hieroglyphic dictionary, I don't even look at the English pronunciation or definition, because I know that they're not unbiased, and so you can't trust them. You have to look at the glyph itself, and maybe you can get a honest pronunciation from what they printed, what the Egyptologists printed, but you certainly will not get much. Occasionally you do from the definitions. So and these are the same people who interpreted the Book of Coming Forth or the Book of the Dead, however you want to say it, so you have to look at it tongue in cheek. The necessity for people of color around the world to somehow create a group that can study our own glyphs that we left, and then compare it to other languages and cultures and practices and determine what the true meaning is invaluable in determining where we go. And one of the first things, which is what the Conspiracy of Silence points out, is we have to reestablish just how much damage Christianity has done to our mentality, to our beliefs, our system. We still retain the same potential as did our ancestors, the same abilities to travel to the other world, the
Something happened. Jubal, we can't hear you. You must have hit something, Jubal. I don't know what happened. I don't even see.
Yeah, he's still here, but the sound is not working for some reason.
Might have muted himself.
He's not muted. He's not muted. He might be coming back. Let me see.
You can hear, this is Haru Asar, aka Dr. Tom, Mr. Jubal. Thank you very much for your answer.
So he's not here anymore, bro.
Okay, well, Joe, what did you want to ask, though?
I want to ask him, he's been on the Christian. I want to know what he thought about the other two major religions and their dealing with that. Number two, I want to ask him about the Gnostics and the worship of nature was another
Yeah, Jubal.
And I also want to ask him about
Oh, man. Video calling is unavailable. Well, okay. Can we just continue it all with the audio?
We can't hear you, but can y'all hear him?
No.
Go ahead and let him speak so I can tell you.
Go ahead, say something, Jubal.
Okay, well,
We can hear him good. We can hear him good.
We hear you good. Go ahead.
All right.
All right.
I don't know what's going on. I say this. I'm illiterate when it comes to this artificial.
Difficult to hear him now.
All right. All right. We got a question for you.
Can I go with my question?
We use as referring to the ancient cliffs in Africa is because, or rather, came from these Egyptologists who were all biased and who were Christian and Jews too in their assessment. So you really can't trust what they've printed and what they offer. You have to look through it. It's necessary for people of color around the world to better interpret what we have there as far as the glyphs go. But how we get such a group together, I don't know. I'm just hoping that some of our younger youths will take it up and somehow form a study group from all the various cultures around the world and have equal input into determining what really is going on with it.
All right. This brother, Joe Hembrick, have a couple questions. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, brother, I want to know what category you put the Hebrews and the Muslims in. As you know, we've been talking about Christianity. That's number one question. Number two, the Gnosticism is it a pretty much a true commune with nature? And number three, have you ever heard of the Anunnaki? I'm sure you have. And what role did they play or did they ever exist? That's the third question, real quick.
Okay, let's start with the first one. How you feel about the Muslims and the Judaism?
This is my book pertaining to the Jews, and then I've added to it what I had to say at the beginning with you. That term being applied to people who worship nature. And there was various divisions amongst them. There's some 400 sects, S-A-C-T, at the time of Constantine came to the Roman Empire. So it was really diverse and, geographical isolation from one another develops various practices and theories. But the bottom line was that none of them believed in any historical Jesus. And that's why Christianity attacked all the Jews, no matter where they were, and suppressed them. And, and they still are really accusing them of murdering their Jesus, even though they know it never existed. They killed 5 million during World War II. Based on the fact that they claimed that they had killed, had ordered the death of Jesus, and even though no Jesus ever existed. But just to show you the fanaticism that comes with that. The Muslims, I think I mentioned in the book, were developed in I don't know the exact year, 7th century, in the Arabian Peninsula, and I believe they developed out of, they were running away or fighting the same Roman Christians who were attacking every place in the Roman Empire and trying to overtake the Palestine, Jerusalem, the Arabian Peninsula in general. And supposedly, I don't want to mention details because my memory's fading, but supposedly Muhammad was fleeing from this kind of violence, and it goes on from there. And then he developed Islam. I don't want to get into that too much. because it hasn't been the focus of my study. Really, it's been the focus of my studies has been about the Christianity and how it's destroying our people. That's why I leave Islam alone. But I believe it were used who originally believed in nature and who were fleeing from the Christians and developed a new form of worshiping nature by developing Islam. That's my, and I don't know what the other part of the question was.
What were the other questions, Joe?
Other question was Nazism and nature, and the last question was about the Anunnaki.
Narcissism, did you say?
Yeah, narcissism and nature.
Would you spell that?
Narcissism.
Yeah.
Gnostics.
Right.
Well, worship of nature in general. The people who worshiped it were the ones who supposedly had gnostic means knowledge. So the persons who worshiped that called themselves Jews, and they were all over. And that's who the Catholic Church attacked. And they had the insight to commune with the spiritual realm, Amenta, if you will. And that ability is what Europeans could not understand because they lacked melanin and couldn't make that journey themselves. And consequently, they called it mystery or voodoo or black magic or whatever. You see, they denigrated it in every way they can. And then finally, after Constantine and the church accepted the church, the Christian church, then they just turned their armies, their legions on the Gnostics wherever they was, all over Europe and Northern Africa.
All right, and the third question, Joe?
About the Anunnaki.
Anunnaki, if he's pronouncing it right.
I don't understand.
Anunnaki. What is it, Joe?
Well, supposedly some
Anunnaki?
Yes. Some kind of beings that come to African assistance in our lives.
It's an ancient culture. It's an ancient culture that took place, arguably 4,000 years before the Egyptians. And the theory is that they have a relationship with beings from another realm, and they were able to fast forward human development. And there are those that believe in that stuff, and there are those that don't.
Well, I don't. You can put me down as don't. I believe in evolution. And, people theorize. My son at one point said he thought pyramids were built by aliens. So it just goes to show that without the knowledge of truth, without the facts, you could say anything about anything. And you could say, hey, there was a Jesus born from a virgin. And this is exactly what they did. And all you need after you do that is to impose it on people. And if they listen, fine. The ignorance, a lot of them will, the ignorant. And those who are intelligent and know better, well, that's who you eliminate, assassinate or whatever you need to do. And that's how you can bring a false narrative into a prominent position. I've never heard of the one particular one you're talking about, but you can theorize. It remains a theory unless you can come up with specific instances or something to prove those ideas. Then it's meaningless.
Right.
From what I've been told of some folks who have been inside some pyramids and whatnot, that there are some pictures of this Anunnaki. Brother, on the screen now, maybe you can speak to that.
Well, I've been inside the pyramids, at least the great one. I didn't see any pictures, but, maybe they went to, there's hundreds of pyramids up and down the Nile, all on the west side of now, I should say. And maybe they saw something I didn't see. And the problem is interpreting what those pictures represented and what they were called at the time. And of course, you can't rely on European analysis to come up with any kind of conclusive answer. So I don't know. I haven't seen them personally. I have been all over Egypt, but those are something I missed, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Rashiki?
Yes, sir.
You know, it's on he's on the East Coast. You gotta let him get some rest.
Okay, I'm just enjoying all the good information.
Well, okay, let me sum up.
If I can ask one more quick question. So, Brother Jubal, so any group that's coming from the Bible as a source of reference is drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak.
Exactly. And we don't realize it. That's the real tragedy is, you know, we are spiritual people. We are. I mean, because we have melanin, we're able to accept that the spirituality, the spiritual world exists, you know. We don't, as I point out, we don't worship the body, the dead body. We worship the spirit that emanates from the dead body. You know, you understand my point here. So that we need that some kind of outlet to satisfy that innate understanding that we have individually. But we've been misled. If we apply Christianity to that, then this is exactly what the European wanted us to do. And it was continued to do even to this day. And we've got to start changing that, especially with our youth. Come on, people, wake up, use your minds, you know, accept the truth. You know, I don't care how many weddings and funerals and communions and whatever, all of the church activities and all of that, or how many times you went to the church and people handed you money and all of this stuff. It's still fake. And we just have to accept it. I know it's harsh words, but it's the truth. And truth was this highest ideal of our ancestors. Why should it be any different for us?
I agree wholeheartedly. Reason I asked the question, there's a lot of young brothers switching from Christianity to this Hebrew Israelite concept. And I tell them, as long as they're coming from the Bible, you know, they drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're well.
Thank
you. First of all, we want to thank Brother Asar for coming and hope that people would go out and talk about his book and then reconcile with it, challenge it, you know, or go do their own research and try to prove that it's incorrect. But I want you to understand that religious, organized religion is a challenge period because it's about cults. A cult is who's doing the believing. The cult is what you believe in. The cult is Jesus. A cult is Christians. And you can make anybody, you form cults. Cults form all over. All you need is people to accept that body of information as truth and as knowledge. And then, as Jubal points out, if you disagree, they attack you. That's why you have so many religious gangbanging, spiritual gangbanging, and so much violence. Even when you read the Bible, it starts off with violence, and it ends with revelation, violence, because it's an impositional aspect that becomes a cult. That's why they have songs. That's the ritualization of the cult. Culture is the ritualization of the cult. That's why you have Christian songs, Islamic music, Judaism music. Jews worship at a synagogue. Christians worship at a church. and Muslims worship at a mosque. But they're all part of the Abrahamic faith. The Jews and the Muslims don't believe that Jesus was God's son, or that he performed the miracles that they say. But those were spiritual miracles, as Jubal points out, and mythological concept. So, but my point to you is that it makes a lot of people happy and satisfied to please the cult, even if it's to your disadvantage. Here are people praying that the rope that they're using to hang your ancestors don't break. And here are you praying that it do break. You understand? So when it don't break, you think their prayers were answered. It's a challenge, brothers and sisters. We're not talking about a religion that is used for the worship of life after death. We're talking about people taking religion to use to try to rule the world, i.e. the Vatican, i.e. Mecca, i.e. Israel. You understand? Look what they're doing to the Palestinians. How could you be Jewish and do that to the Palestinians? How could you be Christian in this most segregated day in America? Whites go to their church, the Chinese go to their Christian church, the Mexicans go to their Christian church, and Black people go to their gospel Christian church. But they all believe in one God, but they can't sit down together because of race, ethnicity. Look how they're treating immigrants as aliens. You're supposed to welcome those poor, help them. I thought it was all God's children. That's what they be saying. Yeah. But then when it comes down to sharing power, status, and wealth, no. And so the whole purpose of Christianity was to get white people white power. And the whole purpose of Islam is to give Muslims Islamic power, and Judaism and Israel power. That's what they're after, power. And so all this stuff about Kanye, the only thing they use for Kanye is as a fundraiser. You know, they act like he's so dangerous. Kanye, how is he a threat to anybody? An insane man walking around talking to birds in the sky, and you know, I mean, what are you talking about? But the Jews act like, oh, yeah, Kanye, you know, now send some money, we need the defense league. You understand? And that's how they get their money to open up the stores and open up the businesses. Well, anyway, I don't even want to get into all of that, but I just want to say to Jubal, we want to thank you, thank you, thank you. And as we say in Kawahida, the grains of sand are few compared to the many thanks we offer you for your presentation. And, you know, we wish for you blessings without numbers and all good things without end. Brother Rashaki, take us home.
All right. Powerful. Powerful. Excellent, Brother Jubal. All right. So, Professor Rahh, who we got next week on Monday?
I haven't gotten them yet. I'll get with you. I'm still waiting on Carl Douglas, somebody from Black Lives Matter. Oh, Damien on the 8th. Damien Goodman about gentrification and Crenshaw Subway.
Is that the 10th, Rahh?
That's the 8th.
The 10th is a Monday.
Where's the 10th then?
Okay.
April 10th?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll remind you.
Okay.
All right.
So I want to share what we got going on this Wednesday, folks. Anybody want to come back? Boy, we had a lot of people here tonight. That's so beautiful. So let me show what we got going on. Same way you came on this show, you can come on the next one if you guys have time for us. The guest is Damian McCalman, character or color. How do we want to be judged? So that's our next show on Wednesday.
Well, I'm gonna talk to Brother Hiru Asar, Dr. Palm about doing a presentation also.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take our pause. As Brother Rohan Marley said, we're gonna pause.
And Brother
right,
Jerry, it's good to see you. Brother, Sister Mashariki, I believe the children are our future. All right. All right, then.
All right, so each one teach one in Conscious Corner. Everybody have a good night.
All right, Asar, thanks for everything, bro.